Hey everyone, it's Ivan, KidBadger.com, here to share with you my recent experience of going elk hunting for the first time. Have you never been elk hunting? Well, I have deer hunted, never hunted elk, and wasn't really knowing what I was getting myself into. And I was pretty much going off the very little direction a buddy of mine gave me, which is they go down in the morning to go drink, and then they go up in the evening. So I was like, okay. And this year up in Idaho, they actually have 3 days of cow season. So during this really short window of these 3 days, you can actually hunt female elk as long as it's within 1 mile of private property. So I ended up kind of sitting on the spot down kind of by a creek that first morning and didn't see anything. Went back out there the next morning, didn't see anything. And I was like, well, in the evening, I guess they're going up. So I ended up coming out here, like just off this logging road basically, and there's a spot that's been clear cut. So I was like, well, you know what, like maybe they're coming up. So I went ahead and posted up right down here. Knowing I'm gonna be out here for a while and it's gonna get cold, used a little forethought, brought like my Thermarest pad out here, brought my Kifaru Whoopee, got this guy draped over, all nice and cozy, warm jacket, and pretty much just camped out here next to this burned out log. And one thing I do enjoy about going out in the woods, whether it's hunting, anything else, is, especially hunting, is sitting still and just all the different sounds and everything you end up hearing. It's pretty cool. Granted, occasionally some vehicle or quad would come racing along the road up above me, this logging road, but pretty much just sat here from probably about 5 in the evening, just hanging out, probably about an hour. I camped out looking at this clear cut for, as I mentioned, about an hour. It's probably getting close to about 6 o'clock at night, knowing I was gonna lose the light soon. And I looked, and right down here, coming out, was a calf. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then behind it, a cow. And then another cow and a calf. And all of a sudden, these elk are streaming out down there. At this point, I'm super excited. Never really seen elk, aside from like maybe on the side of the road, something like that, driving along, going through Montana, something along those lines. So all of a sudden there's all these elk and I'm looking out at them. And I know I'm further than a mile from private property. So even though I'm in kind of that little window of cow season, I need to find a bull. So I'm looking, trying to find something with horns down here. Eventually, and at the same time, I'm trying not to spook them too. There's this log right here, and I'm kind of trying to bring the rifle up, borrowed rifle, mind you, trying to bring this rifle up so I can look through the scope, try and spot a bull elk down there amongst this group. Well, I was trying to pull up this rifle to get a look through the scope and not spook these elk, because one kept kind of looking at me, come down, start cropping whatever, look up again. I'm like, like trying to not be noisy so I can look over there. And looking over the scope, I saw something down there with antlers. 6, 7, 8 elk down there. I'm like, okay, I know at least one of those is in fact a bull, which is what I'm looking for. I know I'm not within a mile of private property because of where I ended up pulling off. So I need to actually get a bull, even though it's still in that little window of cow season. So now I know there's a bull down there. So I'm slowly kind of trying to get into some sort of shooting position using this like burned out log right here. Some sort of supported position. Again, borrowed rifle. And I'm not at all a sportsman in the sense that going out for sport, for racks, anything like that. I honestly just want a big freezer full of elk meat. Same with when I hunt deer. And speaking of that, it's one of those where definitely a huge believer in ethically taking game. All the deer I've taken have been usually about 50 yards, all with headshots with an AR, because it's what I had. And a lot of people would argue against that caliber, taking deer, blah, blah, blah. Know your limitations, work within them. Having said that, here I'm with this borrowed rifle, trying to aim in, and not really knowing the distance or anything like that. Like, I don't usually range like range estimate using horses. Elk's pretty much like a horse of the forest with antlers. So I'm looking. All I see is the ass end of what I believe is the bull. Finally, the bull ends up coming out, stepping out from behind this tree. So I'm sitting there, aimed in. I'm like, man, do I take this shot? Do I try and not make noise and get into a better, more supported position rather than just kind of like off of this log right here? And I just had that conversation earlier in the day about, hey, like people end up going elk hunting for like 20 years and never harvest elk. So I'm like, probably pretty lucky right now. Probably want to take this shot since I have it. So sit there, aim in. I'm like, all right. My buddy, again, borrowed rifle. He's like, hey, this thing's 0 to 2. If you're anywhere between 2 and 100, you're only going to be like 1.5 inches off, something like that. So I'm like, all right, heart should be here. All right, let's do this. Finger on the trigger. Natural respiratory pause. And break the shot. At this point, a lot happens all at once. This borrowed rifle of mine from my friend, it's I believe one of the stainless Ruger American bolt action 300 Win Mag. Really light rifle, synthetic stock. It's probably like 5.5 pounds. With a 300 Win Mag, significant amount of kick from this thing. But my buddy, being forward thinking, put a muzzle brake on it to help tame that kick. Doesn't matter, super light rifle. Even with the optic, I'm sure it's probably less than 7 pounds, 300 Win Mag. Even with the brake, boom, I end up coming off target. So I'm trying to get back on target, and all I see is elk going everywhere. And at the same time, because of said muzzle brake, probably permanent hearing loss in my left ear, cumulative, awesome. Boom! And so now all the elk are running around. It's just beep! And I'm looking, and then of course I now see there's actually 2 bulls down there, and I'm like, do I jack another round in here and take a follow-up shot and end up potentially shooting 2 elk? And so I'm just like, ears ringing, everything's loud, deafened, and the elk are just gone, like to the winds. Boom, diving back into the forest. At this point, it's time to see if my aim was true. End up stashing my thermarest, my Kifru Whoopie, start hiking down the hill.